Labor Day. Just wanted to pop in for a quick YouTube live update to give you a sense of what we can expect over the next couple of days, but also take a look at that potential for the Northern Lights tonight. So we'll get started here in just a minute. I'll make sure everything here is working behind the scenes, but what I will do in the meantime, now that we are starting to get beyond sunset and it's getting dark outside, I'll flip those cameras around and we'll take a closer look at potentially what we could see with that Northern Lights chance for tonight. But like I said, give me about 30 seconds to a minute here, and we'll fully be able to get started with this update. Working there and working there. So I think we're in good shape. Thank you all for tuning in this evening. Hope you've had a great Labor Day and have enjoyed the relatively sunny and warm and dry weather that we've seen. As you're tuning in, certainly let us know where you're watching from. And then, of course, as always, if you have any questions or comments as we go throughout this update, feel free to ask those. So what I'm actually going to start off with is the fires that are ongoing. Just doing a quick update on wildfires across the region, which hasn't really changed a whole lot from our last update on Friday. But we do have a few new fires to talk about, primarily up into northwest Montana. Two that we're watching are the Ulm Creek and the Brush Mountain fires. Those are both still relatively small. We're talking anywhere from about 5 to 12 acres, so not looking at large fires by any means. But there are a number of small fires in this area that are not included on this map up here into parts of northwest Montana, the Idaho Panhandle, that are all, say, less than an acre, or they just don't have any updates, but they are smoke reports. Those are ones we're going to have to keep a very close eye on the next few days. We're not expecting too much in the way of wind, but with the temperatures warming as hot as they are likely going to be, those could pose a little bit more of a problem for expanded growth, expanded smoke activity. So, we could be talking about more issues with reduced air quality due to these fires. But in addition, a lot of these back over into Idaho are starting to pick up their activity on them once again, including the Meyer Fire, the newly started Wind Lake Fire, the Good Friday Fire, and even the Island Creek, which has now become the biggest over there, over 13,000 acres. As the Big Bear Fire it's still sitting at 15,000 acres, but it has not changed in its size or its activity really over the last week. So most of the smoke that we're seeing in western Montana right now is coming from these fires back over into Idaho, but we continue to see growth on the Ransom Fire here north of Libby. That's at 622 acres. And then we have, again, the Brush Mountain Fire sitting at 5 acres, Ulm Creek at just over 10 acres. Lightning Creek still sitting at about 2,500 acres. That one has not changed too much either. Then coming down into the Knolls and mile marker 91 fires, those are sitting just over 4,000 acres combined in those, but we are starting to get some better containment on both of those fires, upwards to around 50 to 60% on those. Corral Creek west of Missoula, that has pretty much stalled out, at least on its growth, still sitting just over 350 acres and at about 85 to 90% containment, so some good containment on that particular fire. The Windy Rock Fire, that's now sitting closer to about 4,000 acres. I think it's just shy, but the Devil Mountain Fire and the Windy Rock Fire essentially have been combined together, but they're both in that same area. They've seen a little bit more activity on them today as well. The Squeezer Creek Fire sitting right around 30 acres. Pot Mountain up in the Bob Marshall Wilderness is just under 500 acres. Haven't seen too much in the way of change with that fire. And some good news coming off of our fires down in the southwest Montana. Cloud Rest Fire sitting over 3,000 acres, but now sitting at about 20% containment on it. Bivens Creek is just over 2,100 acres at almost 75, or just over 75% containment. And then the West Fork Fire down here north of West Yellowstone and Hebgen Lake, still sitting just under 1,000 acres, now at 83% containment. So some the cooler weather that we saw earlier on, well, let's say last week, the cooler weather, the wetter weather with all the rainfall, especially into southwest Montana, has very much helped those fires out. So good news there, but really, other than a few sprinkles here and there, maybe a weak thunderstorm up in our mountains, we're only going to be looking at dry, hot conditions over the next 2 to 5 days. So not a whole lot of relief is on the way, at least from a precipitation side of things. Now let's get into the next part of this, and this is the more fun part of tonight's update, talking about that potential for the northern lights tonight. Right now, we're not seeing a whole lot on our cameras. Again, the Kalispell camera is facing kind of off to the west-northwest. Missoula is north, but we are getting a lot of city lights. The haze that's in the air is bouncing a lot of that light pollution essentially back down, so we're not seeing it. Butte's facing west. Our Polson camera, that is facing off to the north, so that's one I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on. And then I'm going to bounce through a couple of cameras real quick just to see what we're looking at right at the moment. So I'm jumping to TV Mountain first. Still pretty dark, but there have been reports of the northern lights in places like Maine, Michigan, Illinois. So I think we're kind of just in that wait, watch, and see type of mode. But TV Mountain facing off to the north, kind of north-northwest. And then Virginia City, which tends to be one of our best ones when it comes to catching the northern lights. Can't see very much. You're just getting a really bad reflection, unfortunately, from the camera and the lights behind me. But this is one we're going to be keeping a very close eye on. This one's looking kind of off to the north-northwest as well. So if we see anything, those are the three cameras that we're going to be watching for tonight. Here's a look at the storm forecast. So the geomagnetic storm forecast to be a G2 to G3. If we do get to those G3 type categories, while it's not an exact specific, like you're going to see it overhead, it does give us a pretty decent chance to be able to see that roughly overhead back off to the north. That's still going to be your best view to get that clear view to the north, avoid light pollution, so get out of the cities and try and get away from looking north through the city. So using Missoula as an example. If you're down towards Lolo or the South Hills, it might be best to try and get a little bit east or west of that, just to be able to break at least through some of that city light. Now, if we can get enough of a substorm in here, enough energy in here, it may cut through enough that we can still see it, especially later on tonight. But that's just something we kind of have to watch and see. But that's, at least those are the options that give you the best chance to see it. What will give you the greatest chance to see it, if you add this on top of it, long exposure photography, and if you can get it on a tripod, even better. You can get photos of the northern lights with your cell phone. I know I've done it a few times with the night mode. It can be done, but if you can go manual on your phone with a little phone tripod, that gives you an even better chance. So as long as the data holds as it is right now, we'll see what happens. Just looking at some of the information behind the scenes from some of the satellites and things like that. Right now, the data is not looking great. Going into some more detail about it, there's some magnetic components and things like that with the northern lights that you kind of have to watch for. One of them is a term called BZ, and when you really get those good shows, those good substorms, usually that BZ is south facing, so it essentially has a negative magnetic component to it. Well, right now it is a pretty high north or positive magnetic field. I don't know if field is the right word. I will say this right now. I love watching the aurora. I am not a specialist when it comes to space weather. But in general, right now, this solar storm is not performing, at least from an aurora side of things, as efficiently as it could. That is something that could change overnight. And if that BZ flips and heads south, which I've seen that happen on numerous occasions, we'll be sitting up north for quite a while, and then all of a sudden it'll flip the complete opposite direction. We're just kind of keeping our fingers crossed that that happens. But like I said, we've already had reports of the northern lights across many of the northern tier states, Maine, Michigan, even as far south as places like Virginia and Illinois. So as we get a little bit later on, closer probably to about 10:30, if we've got any of those substorms happening, I think we'll have at least a decent view. Skies have cleared out fairly well, still looking mostly clear to partly cloudy skies overnight, and the haze hasn't been as bad either. So those are two things that are going to help our visibility, but this is really going to be focused through Tuesday morning. So from now until Tuesday morning, off and on throughout the night, but we're going to have to wait for those little substorms. You can even see in the video, see how it's just general colors, and then all of a sudden those pillars pop up. Those pillars showing up in that brief period of that time lapse behind, that is one of those substorms, and then it starts to settle back down. It gets more general in the color instead of those, very vibrant pillars. That's a lot of times how these will behave. So that's what we're going to be waiting for, those little substorms for tonight. Now, as for what we can expect on those temperatures tonight, we're talking 50s for most locations. Tomorrow, it's going to be another hot day. 80s and 90s are going to be common. Missoula, 95 degrees, and parts of northwest Montana are going to be even hotter. That's why we have heat advisories for the Kootenai Cabinet region, lower Clark Fork region, as well as back into the Idaho Panhandle, eastern Washington. For our region, those begin at noon tomorrow, so noon on Tuesday, and continue through midnight Wednesday night. So 2 days of very hot temperatures. Again, 80s and 90s for most locations, but up into northwest Montana's valleys, we're talking Libby, Trout Creek, Troy, Thompson Falls, Knox, and Heron. We could be talking temperatures here into the low 100s, so 101, 102 degrees can't be ruled out. And even after that, Thursday, Friday, we're talking temperatures still in the mid-90s up there. But you notice that cool down, we will slowly start to see a pattern change. Some southwesterly flow starts to move in, likely looking at our next storm system. Right now, we'll see how strong it is. But starting Friday, again, there is an isolated chance for a shower or a thunderstorm tomorrow. I think most of that's going to be in our higher elevations up in the mountains. But Friday, Saturday, and then even beyond that, Sunday into Monday, I think we'll be talking at least better rain chances, especially for Interstate 90 and south as that southwesterly flow starts to roll in. Right now, it does look like it's going to be more isolated to scattered in nature, but we have plenty of time to watch that and see if we get a bit more of that moisture in here for the end of the weekend and early next week. But again, really that's the key takeaway. We're going to be hot, we're going to be dry for the next couple of days. Winds aren't going to be particularly strong, so I would say fire weather risk is going to be elevated, but not critical or high, really high by any means. But with the fires that are already out there, we'll see more activity on them. That means more smoke in the air, and that likely means hazy skies, reduced air quality, at least just a little bit. So again, this is going to be kind of last chance. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask those or share those. In the meantime, outside of the heat, and then eventually that chance for showers and storms towards the end of this week, northern lights, and hopefully we get a good show. It may not be, we're kind of on the front edge of this solar storm, so maybe as we get more of that energy, it's the core of that coronal mass ejection. Maybe we'll see that BZ flip and we'll see that come a little bit further south. Here in western Montana, it's not as big of a detriment just because we are as far north as we are, but getting that more southward facing would give a better chance for the magnetosphere to be more efficient in creating the auroras. So that's essentially where we are with that. And I'm going to watch this. I was just talking about things flipping, and at least some of the new data starting to come in is showing the potential of a flip. This may be just a short-term change, and let me see if I can show you this really quick. This is where I get a lot of aurora information, and it's this bottom chart right here. I wish I could zoom in a little bit closer. That's about as good as I'm going to get. But notice how it's been in the green in this up section. That's why it's been facing more to the north. But see how right at the very end here, it drops off to the south. That's what we're watching for, at least for the aurora to be more efficient. This gray line on this chart is indicative of the Earth's location. So for at least the next little bit, that BZ is going to be facing north. But if that southward turn stays there and isn't just a very short type of turn, then at least when it comes to the aurora, we could be in business to at least see a pretty good show. That's something we're just going to have to watch, and that's very much a sort of play it by ear and kind of watch the data. Where I'm looking at is some of the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center pages. It's where I get a lot of my information, especially with the magnetometers that help measure that magnetic field here in the atmosphere. So some really cool stuff. It gets into some more complicated science that I don't fully understand, but I am doing my best to learn so I can share and inform. But really, that's where we are. The potential for the Northern Lights is there. Can you tell I get excited about it? I love seeing them, and I know a lot of people do too. So I hope we all get the chance to get a good sight of them over the next couple of hours. If you get any photos or videos of the Northern Lights, feel free to share those with us at nbcmontana.com/chime-in. If we get some good ones, I'm quite sure there will be a slideshow, a gallery, and maybe even a little quick story on them for tomorrow, for maybe our evening show, but maybe even in our morning show, NBC Montana Today with Jason Hurst and Chief Meteorologist Brooke Foster. That starts at 5 o'clock, and then we'll be back for our broadcast at 5, 6, and 10 tomorrow. But as always, tune into our live broadcast coming up here in just about 25 minutes, and I will be watching the cameras very closely. Again, Virginia City, TV Mountain, and Polson. If we see anything on those cameras during the show, trust me, I will get them on air so we can get a view of them. But if not, you can also watch our cameras from our NBC Montana website. So nbcmontana.com, you can go to the weather tab, and if you use the drop-down tab on weather, you can go to cameras, and that pops up all of our working active cameras right now. So I know Polson is there. Virginia City was down for a while, so it may not be back there yet. But TV Mountain, Polson, both there. So that's something you can watch throughout the night as well. So I've rambled on enough. Like I said, you can tell I'm excited about the Northern Lights. It's one of my favorite things to see and to watch here up in Montana. So with that, I will wrap this up. Thank you all for tuning in this evening. Have a great rest of your Labor Day evening, and I hope you have a great rest of your work week moving forward, and I will see you all on the next update. This will likely be, I'll probably pop back in for Wednesday or Thursday with the next update, but really the key takeaway for the next 2 days, we're talking hot, primarily dry conditions, and some hazy conditions with wildfires becoming more active. So I'll see you all on the next one with NBC Montana. I'm meteorologist Mitchell Combs.